Thank you, everyone, for joining today. This is a webinar hosted by Galileo, where we're going to be talking about the so popular topic of productionizing agentic applications. Super excited for this topic. So much interest in this topic. I think it's impossible to avoid hearing about agents from anywhere today if you're in the world of tech. And if you go to the next slide, I just wanted to spend a second to invite and introduce our guest speaker today. Darren is a CMAU graduate with over a decade of experience in building LLM applications and productionizing them. Today, he's joining us as a staff ML engineer and head of Agentic AI at Chegg. Darren's going to be sharing with us a lot of his learnings from building agents at Chegg and elsewhere. And Darren, thank you for joining us here today.
Yeah, thank you, Mirza, for introducing me. It's my pleasure. Today, we have a very exciting topic on how do we go beyond POCs and actually start using them in production. I'm going to cover three key topics. So I'm going to talk about why agents have suddenly become practical. They were not practical a few months ago. And what use cases are they unlocking? And then I'm going to talk about how does it take a village to productionize agent. Designing agent is a cross-functional team effort than just doing an engineering handoff. So we'll talk about even the organization aspects of designing agents, and then touch upon how does a tool like Galileo. It's a really important part of the tool stack when it comes to building agents. When you're setting up setting up your evaluation, observability, and productionizing, what does it take to do that? So let me start by saying that actually, slowly, the way the software is built is actually changing. So it used to be, or at least most of the internet today is navigating web pages, but this is changing rapidly. So in this case, this is a tech website. In this case, you would previously like click on understanding a topic and then navigate to the right subject to get to the content you want. But we are moving away from this paradigm. So there's a new IO, a new breed of software that's evolving. We have a new user experience where the user just have to let their intent known, and the right information and the right content is given to you, or the right action is just performed for you. So this is a big shift from navigating cumbersome web pages to new automated workflows or conversations. To take a step further, the personalized software uh, is getting unlocked. This personalized software knows your journey. The software knows you were struggling with, let's say, applying Newton's first law of motion, case of chegg. It keeps into account your current intent that you only have one day to prep for the exam that's upcoming. And this is goal-based. It knows that what is the kind of prep you need given the constraints that you have. So it's quite smart than how things used to be. So this new breed of software would be less and less about navigating web pages, but you just let your intent known, and things would happen for you. And we also see how search has changed from Google to Perplexity. The same shift is happening in many different industries. Yeah. So, I mean, if I were to summarize this, uh, agents can understand your intent, can make sense of the context, can pull information from the memory, and personalize the actions for you. And now let's talk about this. We are in an exciting time, but how has this become practical and why people have actually started using it? So there are a couple of things that are happening. So the cost and latency of LLMs is basically decreasing every 6 months. And at the same time, the quality is also improving. So agents have become not just these theoretically interesting things, but now they've become practically viable. To put this in perspective, in the same time and cost it takes for one GPT-4 call, it used to take about 20 seconds and $0.01. But now we can execute these multiple agentic LLM calls with superior results in the same time and in the same cost. So because of reduction in cost and latency, These agents can now collaborate with each other to actually give better responses. In fact, 40% bit higher quality, as we've observed, than just a single LLM response. And that's why they become practical certain. And it's actually changing the way software development is done, and it's slowly happening. In traditional software, you have structured inputs and outputs and clicks, as I showed you. These inputs then trigger rule-based orchestration, uh, a rule-based orchestration of microservices to perform this a predefined task. But with the new IO of language, the new user experience of language, now we need to cater to many different abstract goals and endless possibilities a user could ask for. Hence, we need to move away from rule-based orchestration to now leveraging LLM to interpret the abstract goals and intents and dynamically orchestrate different microagents. We're moving from microservices to microagents to achieve these abstract goals by dynamically making the right decision to call the right tool, the right prompt at the right time, and then figuring out when to perform RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and how to leverage memory to personalize and improve the quality of responses. So this means we need a new playbook and new tools to tackle these challenges. And what microagents are they perform specialized tasks and they can work together to achieve a broad objective. Uh, for example, first we need to understand, in case of chat, first we need to understand the topic and syllabus, how much time a user has for prep, plan a conversations, give these practice questions. So there's a lot of like context, intent, and planning that needs to be done to execute this broad goal. And all of this can be achieved with microagents. So while agentic workflow offers several advantages, they also have some baggage. Uh, the advantages are you can now handle complex conversational workflows, execute uh, execute more complex workflows in the background that can be now easily customized. But the baggage is that it's prone to hallucination and have a lot of non-deterministic outcomes uh, to achieve the desired level of accuracy and safety and reliability. So we have to rethink the playbook of building software with agents. So let me give you an example of an architecture that has worked really well for us. So here is a supervisor multi-agent architecture. So supervisor agent creates a plan that these micro agents can follow. These agents are picking up different skills as you move from one sub goal to other to finally achieve the broad objective. They leverage the right user data and memory in real time. In this example, you can see uh, this supervisor agent first understands the state of the student. They figure out what is going to be my plan of action, and then they plan the right next skill to execute to achieve the sub goal. It picks up contextualized information from the memory. It performs actions at every turn to finally achieve a broader objective. And all of this is happening dynamically by making the right micro decisions at the right time. So this is like how these agents are making decisions in real time. But let's look at what does it really take to make such a complex system, which is making autonomous decisions, but you have control over that. So actually, it turns out agentic design is a very collaborative exercise between multiple teams. It's not just a simple engineering handoff, it's a team sport. Agents are going to bring subject matter expert AI engineers more closer together on the design board than ever before. SMEs and AI engineers closely collaborate on defining agents and prompts as these workflows are designed uh, to reflect. And these SMEs are kind of like reflecting their expertise on how to do these tasks. In case of Chegg, we have learning scientists who are helping us design these workflows. Then you have red teaming. And during red teaming, again, the subject matter experts, the product folks, and the engineers folk come together to meet the standards that have been set in terms of safety and reliability, and how, in what scenario, what action should be performed. This takes a lot of iteration. Red teaming is a difficult exercise. And when it comes to creating the agentic infrastructure, you have to have many aspects in mind. You have to set up the guardrails, observability in place. You have to see if you're meeting the accuracy standards. So there's a lot even when it comes to like agentic infrastructure. And when you figure out all of this, that's when you have an agent that can be productionized. So similar to um, software development lifecycle, agentic development lifecycle also has 3 steps: design, test, and productionize. In the designing phase, you need to design and decide what are the different micro agents that are going to be working together, and how will they be orchestrated to fulfill the broader goal. Then in the testing phase, you're testing your agentic workflows by evaluating prompts, evaluating different workflows that are being triggered in different scenarios. You're setting up agentic traces to figure out and debug whether they're taking the right decision at the right time. And then you're doing a lot of red teaming and even simulation to simulate different scenarios. And simulation is a very popular concept in self-driving cars, and I think it's now becoming a popular concept in even language when you're trying to simulate many possible scenarios. And then the final step is to productionize, looking at guardrails, setting the right online metrics to observe if things are going wrong or in the right direction, where's the drift happening, and setting up human in the loop evaluation pipelines to safely productionize them. Uh, Here is a snapshot from Galileo on how you can actually set up agentic traces to figure out if if the right decisions have been taken at the right time, like I've been saying, and you can figure out here in the screenshot, okay, vector store was called in a particular scenario. Was it supposed to be called? Did it pull up the right results? So you need to have a lot of traces to observe how agents are doing. Something that I think tools like New Relic are not capable of. You need kind of specialized tool for agent tracing. And then these agents are also using prompts, and so you need to benchmark if these prompts are working well and what is the best version of the prompt out there for these agents. Uh, in terms of ensuring accuracy and safety, you're setting guardrails because these agents can sometimes have irreversible changes. Like it can maybe cancel a subscription. It can have some safety risk. You're chatting with someone. These agents are chatting with the student or executing a transaction that was not intended, or some personal information is being shared. So a lot of important guardrails need to be in place. And there are online metrics that you need to set up to monitor the overall health of the system, and have like humans evaluating this also time to time. So not just automatic evaluations, but also humans observing and setting up criteria for evaluation. Uh, so all of this, all of these uh, important aspects of productionizing Galileo offers in their suite of observability and productionizability. And all of these come in one single platform. And as a result, we are seeing at Chegg there's a growing adoption by 35 plus team members across our 5 teams that are using Galileo. We are using agentic tracing to debug. We are using their Galileo's evaluation pipeline for benchmarking prompts. And this has really increased our development velocity and helping us save time in testing and red teaming. And ultimately, because of the combination of being able to use agents and velocity that Galileo is giving us with all the necessary tools to productionize agents, we have also seen an overall reduction in cost. So now I'll pass on uh, to Murtaza to talk about some of the nuanced aspects of Galileo and how even Galileo as a platform is evolving.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Darren. That was great. Enjoyed seeing kind of the iterative nature of like the work you guys do. It's not a one and done solution. That's super cool. It's super awesome to see. I see there's a lot of questions in the chat. Please continue to ask questions. We're gonna move to questions just a few minutes. You guys will also see there's like going to be a poll that pops up right now. Please do help answer our poll. Our poll questions are right there. I know a lot of folks are asking about different types of frameworks and different types of methods and use cases. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we'll incorporate these into our questions at the end as well. And just for a very short kind of explanation, at Galileo, we've really been focused on helping, as Darren mentioned, helping accelerate development velocity by giving developers a trusted evaluation layer and making that evaluation layer power your development workflows end to end. So, as Darren mentioned, like whether you're developing or iterating or planning, or whether you're producing your app and trying to find where are those issues happening and how can I debug them quickly, are you trying to move from a reactive approach to a proactive approach where you're stopping known kind of hallucination types before they reach your users? Galileo provides like this end-to-end platform that's powered by a set of research-backed metrics and evaluation foundation models that we think are best in class. Um, Darren, I'm curious to hear from you. You mentioned kind of using agents and metrics and stuff of that sort. How does this like end-to-end approach kind of map with what you've seen from like agent building?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like I said, agents can make mistakes and they can make costly mistakes. So, you need to uh, have all the observability in place, because when you're deploying it in production, you want to see if there's something that's horribly going wrong. And if there is, like, you need to intercept and figure out what it is. And it's agents can sometimes appear like a black box because they're making a lot of decisions. So it's hard to figure out which micro agent is going wrong or going rogue. So yeah, so so in order to do that, you need these three pillars, like Murtaza talked about, to know what's going wrong, how to fix it, and be agile and react in time to, like, course correct. Uh, Not just agent building, but also agent debugging.
Yeah, totally. And if we go to the next slide, I think we've seen philosophically that a lot of people kind of agree with this need for evals across the tool chain. But when we think of evals, some of the things that makes evals difficult today is a kind of the issue of scalability of yes, eval sounds good and all that type of stuff. And if we hit enter just a couple times, we'll see the three things show up here. The three things that we see people struggle with today is how to make evals scalable. So they're not just something that you use in your experimentation sandbox, but something that can power real-time workflows. How to make evals customizable. So they're not kind of generic evals built for 99% of the world, but customized and fine-tuned to follow your business logic and be domain experts in your kind of area. And how to make evals like adaptive. So the same evals types of that were powering your workflows on day zero, how do they adapt and kind of measure things like user drift and test drift as your applications and users interactions evolve to make sure that your eval scale with your applications. And if we go to the next slide, the areas that kind of Darren mentioned, and I'll let him touch on this in the Q&A because there's a couple of questions around this, but there's all these different types of evaluation types of metrics. There's stuff that measure hallucinations. There's a thing called system metrics that we think of as in terms of what method are you using. Is it a RAG-based application? Is an agentic workflow? So actual metrics that measure the kind of quality and safety of your system. There's safety metrics, the things that kind of hit the news headlines first, things like toxicity, bias, PI leakage, all things that could be catastrophic for if gone wrong with your users. And like the last, it's ability to kind of create custom metrics, whether that's like you're a car dealership for Toyota and you don't want anyone to come to your website and look for things for Honda or stuff of that sort. But this ability to create custom metrics, they're fine tuned to kind of work in the way that your business does is super important. And if you go to the next slide, a core thing that we kind of believe in at Galileo is that it should be super easy to integrate evals into your code base, whether you're a developer and like working in lines of code, or whether you're a subject matter expert and want to integrate evals with just a few clicks. We kind of philosophically believe that it should be an easy part of the tool chain to kind of integrate in your existing development workflows. and it should be deployed kind of where and how you like, whether you're a company that has a very cloud-based approach, whether you're totally on-prem with security considerations, or somewhere in the middle. Um, our kind of philosophy is to kind of help your organization implement evals wherever you have it. And if you go just to the last slide, the only last thing I want to add before we move to like kind of this robust Q&A is please guys feel free to kind of sign up today and try out Galileo. We'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear kind of the agentic workflows that you guys are trying to build. And we love to kind of learn and co-build with you guys on your journey. And I'm going to shift now to run to the Q&A. So there's a
Yeah,
lot of patient folks here that have been waiting for quite some time to get answers to their questions. So I'll
sure.
start from the beginning. There's a question here on helping to understand how we can use hosted model through different agentic frameworks. I'm not sure if you've had kind of looked at different types of agentic frameworks, if you have thoughts on them. I know we have a blog post that answers this, but the questioner is specifically asking about Crew AI and asking if you have any tips on how to kind of bridge the gap and use agentic frameworks.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's like two-part question. What agentic frameworks work well and how do you integrate them with the hosted models? Uh, or what kind of hosted models to use? So s- I think one, they are like, so while like OpenAI is like releasing bigger models and smaller models, I think for a lot of use cases on agentic workflows, it makes a lot of sense to actually take the smaller models because of the nature of micro agents. What you're trying to do is have smaller models. Many micro agents use smaller models and performing actions together. You want like low latency. So which means that you want smaller decisions to be made by different micro agents faster, and but there are more LLM costs happening. If you start using bigger models in all of your micro agents, then the latency could become a big problem. Uh, so so that's important. But that said, there could be some agentic nodes. The reason I use the term nodes is LangGraph is my tool of choice. And in these like agentic nodes, sometimes you're doing very complex tasks. You might want to use um, more a bigger model or a more complex model in these in some of the nodes. The task is heavy, but you should figure out what's the right balance and to use small and to use large language models. And in terms of framework, there are many frameworks, depends on the application that you're using. Uh, we have tend to see like the supervisor frameworks works really well for us. But there are like agentic workflows like reflection, um,
Hmm.
and the supervisor agent uh, that seems to work. You have agentic RAG, uh, which is like figuring out in real time where to route uh, questions and what kind of data set to choose and deciding that in real time. So there's a lot of different workflows depending on your application.
Yeah, totally. And as we're talking about a lot of different workflows, one of the questions, and I think a few folks asked this, that as we think of agents where there's a lot more kind of attack vectors, are there specific type of guardrail metrics that you find most helpful when you're thinking of moving from simple kind of single call LLM systems and RAG-based systems to agentic systems?
Yeah. So again, guardrail metrics depends on. Let me actually pull up the guardrail metrics slide so that we have those metrics in front of us. Uh, it depends on again the kind of application that you're building. For us, quality was very important, and we are using a lot of RAGs behind the scenes. So, which means that we have to when you're using RAG, you have to understand if the context that you're pulling out is relevant. Is have you made the right amount? Do you have the right amount of granularity when it comes to the chunk size that you're pulling? So all the system metrics here uh, around chunk utilization, attribution, context relevance becomes important. It also becomes important to understand how much of hallucination is happening. This is one of the biggest problems in any LLM application. So the way to figure out or reduce hallucinations is uh, figuring out like doing prompt engineering, seeing when you're doing RAG, what's the hallucination score through Galileo, and then start optimizing and experimenting how to reduce that. It's is there is no direct science to optimizing it. It's a lot of intuition that you build when you're working with it. But if you have the right metrics in place, uh, gives you a direction on how to improve and how to iterate. So yeah, so that depends on your application, but yeah, these metrics as highlighted here becomes really important depending on your application.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love one of the points you made, which is that agentic systems are actually combining a lot of different architectures. So a lot of your traditional kind of RAG-based system metrics are still relevant, right? You might want to incorporate new types of metrics as well. And Galileo is going to have a lot of news on that front in the next couple of weeks, but not to give any spoilers. But yeah, it's interesting to see how agentic frameworks are still incorporating other types of AI architectures as well.
Hmm.
Um, the one more question. I like this. This is a very tactical question. So Darren, I'll let you take this as you as you see fit. But someone's asking about PRD writing, which is a favorite task of a lot of product folks. If you were doing making a PRD for an AI assistant, how would it be different from a PRD you're writing for a more traditional web application? Do you have any tips, templates, or best practices for our audience?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's like how do we write PRDs for agentic applications and what
Yeah,
are
and
things to consider? That's a great question. I really want to like go to the slide talk about like how agent building is a team sport. And actually, I would say these are the uh, three pillars I would consider when you're writing your PRDs. Designing workflows. Uh, so when you're writing a PRD, you actually have to now start explaining not just like we are going to give the user the ability to do X, but you have to say to do that, what are the thinking steps that are going to happen to deliver an experience? Because the AI engineers are not subject matter experts, so they can't think about the workflows. Yes, they can take a good guess, but I would rather not have AI engineers think about how we're going to inform the thinking of agents. And that's a very subject matter expert driven workflow, which means it's on AI engineers to educate the subject matter experts on how agentic thinking happens and how the workflows are designed. Uh, so all these, all large language models or companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, like they are the LLMs are doing 80% of the jobs in most of the cases. But in order to create a mode for your company, you need to design you need to design workflows which are very specific to the audience and the customers that you're catering to. That's when you start creating value. So I think really important to add thinking steps when you're writing the PRD, so that engineers are informed on how these works design. Even chalk it out. LangGraph Studio can actually help you visualize all the microagents, how they're going to work together. Define that, then define when you're doing red teaming, what are the different metrics that you're optimizing for, um, which scenarios it can go wrong, and how do you test for those scenarios. That would be another aspect that I would consider. And then to think about safety, reliability, and in what ways things can go wrong, and how do you have measures in place to avoid that. So I think great question. And yes, PRD for agents requires a new template. And in fact, at our company, we've been like discussing this and changing the templates for our PRD.
awesome, super interesting. As you've mentioned, kind of the robust testing and all that stuff needed, our next question digs a little bit deeper into that. But before I get to that, folks, we have a lot of questions, almost 10 questions open. So we'll try to get to as many as we can. But if there are specific questions that you really want to hear, please continue to upvote them so we could prioritize them this way. But one of the most upvoted questions as well, and I think it kind of leans into kind of your thoughtful approach to building agents, is someone's asking, and I'm sure everyone at every business is asking to this today. Are agentic frameworks ready for production grade implementation, or are they still experimental?
Uh, Great question. Uh, First of all, we are seeing agents in production, not just at our company and many other companies. So anecdotally, it's already happening. And as like I said, the reason why it's happening is because of this. The LLMs have become much more cheaper, and the latency have decreased. So that allows you to have these multi agents talking to each other, but still give you the response in time at a very reasonable cost. So if you were to ask me this question 8 months ago or 9 months ago, I would be like, yeah, it's going to happen. It's happening. But I think it has hit that inflection point where it's become suddenly practical, and companies are moving, fast with it. And like tools like LangGraph, uh, tools like Galileo are evolving to make that a reality.
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely, I think everyone would agree, it's a fast moving times in the AI world, and agents seem like a fictional character from a sci-fi novel just maybe a few years ago, and today are very much a reality. And another one of our upvoted questions is about single agent versus multi-agent architecture. Should we start with single agents but evolve into multi-agent for complex tasks? Curious, Darren, if you have some thoughts here.
Yeah. So it depends on the complexity of the task. If the task is just doing one very single thing, uh, let's say you're just summarizing a page, uh, that's it. And that summarization is also not fancy. It's just a simple summarization. Yes, just use one agent, and your agent can use a tool if they like, pull a stuff from the memory, and it'll be fine. The moment the complexity of your workflow start increasing, you need to have multi agents in place, and these multi agents are like doing one task. The problem with like overloading one agent with everything with a very big prompt, it's not going to do the task well. So you can't you like there should be a, and I think everyone in the industry is seeing this, is having to write long essays to inform what one agent should do in different scenarios doesn't work well. It's going to hallucinate, it's going to get the information wrong. So you want to break this big prompt, if you want to do a complex task, into smaller prompts that are being handled by microagents, with- because then you're not giving overloading them with a lot of information to do, a lot of tasks to do. Just get one thing right. And they're really good at getting a one complex thing right, but it has to be granular. And how do you decide granularity? It's not a science, it's an art. And as you play around with it, you figure it out.
That makes sense. I think we probably have time for one or two more questions. So just looking here, there's one question about comparison with Linksmith. Just out of respect for other tools, we're not going to do product comparisons here, any type of heads to heads. So I'll leave that for now. If you're interested in that, I'm sure there's a lot of resources. But folks are asking about LLM reasoning limitations. In what scenarios should we choose a deterministic path? Just writing plain old boring code versus relying on LLM reasoning.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if there are like some very like mission critical transactions, let's say if you're doing like a financial transaction, if asking an agent to do the financial transaction, I would wait and I would test very rigorously and in fact have rules. Uh, but actually, one thing about building agents, not every node needs to have an LLM in place. So when we're talking about micro agents, it doesn't mean that every micro agent has an LLM in place. You can have a node that's doing a rule-based task, and you can have nodes that are using LLM. In highly critical scenarios or highly critical actions, you can still stick to rules, but you can have other agents that have LLMs at their back. So it's the systems are like a graph that's passing the buck from one node to the other to do tasks. And then every node could be an LLM, or but could be a rule based approach depending on the task. So we are moving to hybrid solutions. It's not that you give up on control or rules if you start adopting agents or start adopting these like graph based approach to building agents. So you have best of both worlds.
Awesome. Cool. I'll tee up our last question. A lot of folks are asking about live demonstrations. Just a reminder, folks, we'll have separate sessions for those type of workflows, developer workshops where we go kind of hands-on on tools. But I'll just leave those for now. But I like this question. This question's interesting to me. Where costs, I'm sure many people are worried about costs, and someone's asking that I've been working on agentic applications. Controlling the tokens is very challenging, which leads to high inference cost.
Hmm.
Is there a way to control tokens used, and also which models are best for agentic? This part you already answered. So just the first portion about being able to control tokens used and maybe control for cost.
Yeah. So prompt caching has become, I think, really handy. If you're getting like same types of answers, you've already answered those questions or done those work, so you can just use the cache response. So that's one to handle the cost concerns. And actually, it turns out that if you broken down your this like prompt wrapper approach of like single LLM response to actually multi-agent, counterintuitively you end up saving costs. Let me tell you how. It's in every turn. Now you're not burning this big prompt tokens, because what you've done is you've modularized the big prompts that people used to write into smaller prompts. So as a result, only one of those graphs are being traversed at a time. And what's happening because of that is you're not using this. If it's, let's say, if it's a conversational application, you're not using such a big context, big prompt at every turn. You're judiciously using smaller prompts that are being divided into your microagent workflow and executing them one at a time, rather than like having like this so many tokens that you're burning at every. Um, so in counterintuitively, multi agents actually helps you save on prompt tokens, but there are ways to like do prompt caching. When you're doing RAG, figure out what should be the right chunk size so that you don't end up adding the entire document in the context window, uh, idle chunk. Even like figure out what before you generate an answer based on RAG, because RAGs can add the most amount of tokens, which chunks to remove before adding uh, a token. And then when it comes to evaluation, Luna is a small language model. Observability and evaluation also becomes less costly like small language models.
Amazing. Thank you, Darren. And thank you everyone for joining today. I sure learned a lot from you, Darren, and I learned a lot from the audience's engagement. Darren's a pioneer in the space. He's building awesome agentic stuff. I highly recommend you guys connect with him on LinkedIn. He's just a wealth of knowledge and an awesome person to work with. Folks, if you guys are interested in kind of exploring a lot more in kind of agents and agentic kind of workflows, we'll have a lot more of these sessions coming forward. And please, I'd love to invite Darren again too, if you'd have us. Thank you all for joining. And at the end, if anyone would like to try Galileo, feel free to go to galileo.ai and try out Galileo and make sure you guys are able to sign up today. So thank you all for joining, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Murtaza. This was great speaking. Great forum, great questions. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you.